morning, everyone, and welcome to the June 14th Finance Committee meeting. We are going to start off this morning going through contracts, section 1, and we're going to start with item 1.01, pre-ACT and ACT, and we've got Dr. Tressa Wright here to speak to you about that this morning.
Good morning, team. Thank you for having me. Basically, what you see before you is our yearly submission that we do to cover the cost of ACT testing and pre-ACT testing. For the last, I think it's 4 to 5 years, we've done what we call census testing, which is testing on site every junior in our school district. And so, of course, with our previous school year, we had to shift away from on-site testing, and we opted to provide our juniors with vouchers. And when we realized that we weren't going to be able to host the spring test date, we also offered our seniors a voucher. And a voucher essentially gives the student an opportunity to take the test on a date that's convenient for them on one of the national test dates. And so we provided the funding for the students to go and take the testing off-site. We had probably about 1,200 students take advantage of that opportunity this year. With the combination of the juniors and seniors. We do have some seniors, incoming seniors, so this incoming class who opted to wait until this fall to take advantage of their voucher. Unfortunately, the way the ACT cycle works, they work on a yearly rotation, yearly cycle. So we had to wait until this next cycle to be able to purchase those vouchers for the students for the next school year. So we have probably, my guess is close to 100 seniors that will be taking advantage of the vouchers this year. And then our best guess is about 700 juniors that we hope that will also take advantage of the vouchers for this school year. You can see the cost breakdown for the vouchers are $55 per voucher per scored test. And then we also have an additional fee here for the pre-ACT, which is essentially what it says. It's getting those students ready for the ACT. And then we have Lease Summit North, who is piloting for us, giving the ACT, the pre-ACT in 9th grade as well, just to see what results we get from that and how we can best support our students with that information. That's really the information in my part of the report. What questions could I answer for you?
Well, that was one of my questions was about this item, and it was about the pre-ACT at North. So I think you just answered the question by saying it was a pilot. And that's why the other 2 high schools aren't included in that. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. Prior to me sitting in this position, I know Christy had worked with Dr. Meisenheimer at North, and he expressed some interest in seeing what kind of results and information we can get to help our students. I know a goal for him relates around his ACT scores, and so he wanted to pilot that so much that what's happening is I'm covering a portion of the fee, the assessment budget, and he's picking up the additional through his building budget.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. Appreciate you being here this morning.
Is it okay if I head out, Dr. Miller?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank
you. We're going to move on to item 1.02, Desmos Math, and Dr. Flack is here to speak to you about that this morning.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Desmos Math is a product for the middle school. In the past, we've purchased workbooks that go along with our illustrative mathematics series. This year, because of the pandemic, lots of resources were tried by different teachers. Group of teachers tried Desmos, which is an online version of that workbook. Now, just to remind you, illustrative mathematics is an open source curriculum, or not curriculum, but resource mathematics textbook. And so there are multiple things that align with that. So it's open source, so basically anybody can write to those resources, but it all aligns. And so after the teachers had tried that, this Desmos is an online resource. It provides the same workbook, but also some instructional activities that you can plug into Schoology and use that way. So we provided an option to our middle school teachers by department to say at each of the schools, do they want the traditional paper workbooks or do they want the online workbooks? Two of our schools chose online Desmos, one chose the traditional model. So we're trying to provide some options for teacher choice that are within the district boundaries of the curriculum and making sure that they still align with what we're doing. So this is a purchase request for two of the buildings to have a 1-year subscription to Desmos, which is about the same cost. It's a little bit less actually than the paper workbooks. So I'll share that and then open it up to questions if there are any.
Not seeing any. Thank you for being here this morning, Dr. Flack.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, we're going to move on to item 1.03, and that's contracts $15,000 and less. And Krista Battaglia is here to answer any questions you may have.
Good morning, everyone. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Thank you, Krista. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Dr. Whaley is going to join us. He's got the next 3 items. He'll be speaking to you about the Apple Computer Lab replacements, the lease purchase for the Microsoft Surface Book, and the interactive smart panels. Dr. Whaley?
All right, good morning. Technology is really excited to bring the next 3 items to the board for approval by this committee as well as tomorrow. So the first item, as Dr. Miller said, Apple Computer Lab replacements. We still have a number of labs in our middle school, production labs, as well as high school publishing and production. They use programs such as InDesign, which is only really functional on a Mac. So therefore, Apple products are still part of those curricular areas. And so that first item is a quote, pretty small replacement this year with regard to Apple products. But that quote would cover replacing the Apple devices in those labs that are now at end of life. And we actually run those for 5 years before we seek replacement on those. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, moving on to the next item. So this one's exciting. We've been working on this one for quite a while. The board, as you both know, you got to see a demo of the Surface as well as the Smart Interactive Panel last week at the work session. So thanks to Kyle Pace and team for facilitating that. So what this is right now, our staff laptops are some variation of a 5500 series through HP. It's just a traditional laptop form factor. It's not touchscreen. You can't write on it. So anything you would do is just through a traditional, either a touchpad with a mouse or a keyboard. And so we've really started paying attention to what teachers are needing, especially as we went into closure. Now, a lot of teachers requested several things, but the first is the desire to actually be able to write on a screen so they can annotate notes back to kids, especially with everything so digital now through Schoology and other curricular resources. Our teachers have really asked, hey, I have to have a way to write on the screen. I would like something a little bit lighter to carry around so I can perhaps untether from the front of the room, present from various places in my classroom, and then just have something that's just a lot more portable. The current devices are pretty heavy. So we went out, we looked at several different vendors. We assembled a team of close to 50 teachers and technology staff and administrators, and we really took a solid look at what was available as far as the education market that would really meet the needs of teachers. And so what we came back with was the recommendation in front of you, which is the Microsoft Surface Book. By reallocating existing funding and switching to a lease model, we can replace every instructional staff member device. That would include building principals, teachers, OTPTs, and a number of other staff. We can do it all at once, which places teachers on the exact same device with the exact same replacement cycle. That makes PD a lot easier. That kind of levels the playing field across our classrooms and really allows us to offer a complete package to teachers, including an external monitor, which again is a really big ask by teachers when they're trying to grade, enter grades on one screen, annotate on another. So we included an external monitor. We included an external Bluetooth mouse and keyboard. Also exciting to add accidental damage for our staff. Currently, if a teacher damages a device, whether at home or school, they're responsible for the replacement cost of that device. This would allow for up to 2 claims in a 4-year period per device. So if you can imagine, especially carrying around, the tablet portion of the Surface, and they were to drop that, just in the day-to-day teaching, they wouldn't be on the hook for making that replacement. So we really want them to use them as they were intended. So we thought that was important. Also included in the quote was just an in general 4-year warranty. You really can't work on these in-house. They're going to have to be sent out to Microsoft, and so they're guaranteeing a next day business replacement. So if one were to be damaged or one were to stop working, we notify Microsoft. They immediately send us a replacement device. That gives us time to box up ours and send it back. So if you can imagine, they'll kind of pass each other in the mail, so we can keep those replaced as quickly as possible. And then finally, we've got some tech services, the white glove service with asset tagging, imaging, and data capture, which allows us to get these out to teachers in a lot quicker manner. So again, this is a 4-year lease. We'll make 4 lease payments. And at the end of that lease, we have 2 choices. We can buy them for $1, and that would just be the Surface Books. We will own the other equipment, the monitors, the keyboards, and things. But we can buy these for $1, or we can elect to sell them back to the leasing company. And they're estimating right now about $100 per device, depending on condition. And they'll actually send somebody out to the district. They'll evaluate them, they'll box them up, they'll send them back for us, and we don't pay shipping costs to send them back to the leasing company. Most likely, that's the option we would exercise at this point. A day-to-day laptop has about a 4-year life, so we will recover some of that cost back in a payment from them. Any questions on that?
Dr. Whaley?
Yes.
I did have just a couple of questions, and I really want to applaud the approach that you guys took in with that group of over 50 people gathering feedback. I know you did surveys, all of the work that you did to make sure that you selected the device for common use across all the staff. I just think that was a great approach, and thank you for taking that. Let me pull up my questions here. On the kind of future growth, like as a new teacher comes in, is the pricing model the same, and will the package be purchased the same, and is the pen going to be purchased by the foundation? Kind of those questions of, if you do this bulk buy, then what does the future look like? If you could help me with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So up to a certain dollar amount. So this, again, it's all coming out of the technology budget, and we have a year-to-year replacement cycle. Picture this as the big purchase year, where we get most of them done, and then moving forward, this will just become just through the typical staffing process. So as we add teachers, there's a cost associated with it. 9 times out of 10, we can absorb that through the technology budget. And yes, we would purchase the entire package. I think a good example of that would be middle school 4. We don't know how the staffing is going to lay out with that quite yet, but we also know we're going to have to add staffing probably somewhere. So of course we would provide a monitor for every teacher, the stylist, and all those things. The foundation is committing. I had talked to Cheryl, and so of course I was out last week. The foundation is obviously, I should have mentioned that, they're providing a stylist on this initial dose for each teacher. And I'm sure we can work with them in the future, because I know they love to be involved in technology things in the district.
Great. And will the pricing be locked in to your example of middle school 4, will the pricing be locked in?
Not necessarily. We'll be kind of at the mercy of how that goes. These are purchased through a cooperative contract through CDW. It's the Missouri Schools Education Plus. So the pricing will still be very competitive. And so there's really not a bulk discount per se, like a quantity discount. It's kind of the price we get no matter what. So it will be, I don't know what it could be next year and beyond, but it would still be on some sort of a cooperative contract.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. think we're good to move on.
Okay, all right. With that, we're going to move on to item 1.07. Ryan Hall's going to,
I saw 106, the smart panel.
106. Sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
That's okay. Okay, so this is exciting too. So right now in our classrooms, I'm going to use Lease North as an example. They have over 20 different types of projection devices. So if you walk in that building, you may see just a flat panel TV, you may see a projector, 3 or 4 different types of projectors of varying brightness. So it's really kind of a potpourri of technology projection devices in the district. And so I know, especially at some of our elementaries, if you were to walk from, take Westview, if you walk, 2 doors down, one has a really, really nice projector. It's a really big wall space. It's awesome for kids to see. But if you walk 2 doors down, it's a really dim projector. You can't really see it. And so that kind of led us to 2 or 3 years ago when CFMP started. Technology was charged with kind of addressing that issue. Like, how do we make sure our kids are seeing our content? We're addressing the needs of kids and teachers kind of in that future ready way. And so we started talking with other districts. KCAV, which of course we have an existing AV contract with, they've been a great partner with us. They've given us some awesome references and resources. And then of course, Kyle Pace coming from Green Valley, he had a lot of experience with classroom projection and specifically with regard to smart interactive panels or even just take interactive panels. Not necessarily the smart brand. So lots and lots of districts are moving to this technology because you really get kind of an all-in-one package. So it's your audio, it's your ability to wirelessly project throughout the classroom, plus all the features that are actually built into the panel itself, which of course teachers can interact with, but also students can as well. And so again, by kind of switching to a leasing model and using existing allocated funds, we can, the proposal in front of you is providing a smart interactive flat panel in every classroom across the district. And so it's a big purchase, it's a big project, but this will set us on a 5-year course where as things start to break in that 5, 6, 7 years, we can put everything on this replacement cycle now instead of leaving it to the buildings to say, uh-oh, this smart panel broke, I have to pay for that out of my building budget. That is kind of what has caused the technology drift, because a lot of times buildings are replacing with what they can afford, not necessarily what they would really like to have. And so we think this is a win for building budgets. It's a reliable device. They are estimating a 50,000 hour life, which is far beyond 5 years. KCAV has talked with us. They're thinking most likely 7 years plus. Which is why they're confident enough to give us 10 years of smart licensing software. They think we'll have no problem running these far beyond the actual lease. So we'll make 5 lease payments. And then at the end of that, same as the Surface Pros, we have the option to purchase those for $1 or we can send them back. But most likely in this case, we'll be buying those for $1 because that would be pretty cheap. So $939 and we get to keep them. So that's the recommendation before you, and happy to answer questions.
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate Mr. Pace and Mr. Novinsky making the presentation at our work session or retreat last week. They did a great job and very informative. So I appreciate that. So if you'd pass that along to them, I would appreciate that too. Thank you. I
absolutely will. I should add too, Board Member Campbell mentioned feedback and things. As we started looking at these, Kyle Pace was actually able to get KCAV to send us a board for each classroom as a pilot. And so that was really neat. So these have been in our buildings for basically the last part of the school year, or the better part of the school year. And so the feedback's been really good on these as well. So I feel like we've done a pretty good job of getting out and getting feedback and trying to pick that device that'll meet the needs of most of our users.
Dr. Whaley, I did have a question on the support for these.
Yes. So the way that looks, again, KCAV is a great partner. They have several interactive flat panels in their warehouse. And so just because of our relative location to a big city, they are able to bring those to us. It's called a hot swap. And so basically, instead of us having to run through Smart and having them ship one to us and us arrange with the shipper and all those things, like some of the districts that are not close to a city, we've got the advantage to call KCAV and say, hey, this one is broken. They've got several sitting there in their warehouse. They bring one out brand new to us and they collect the other one, and then they handle the replacement through Smart, which is really nice.
Great. And I have the similar question on these because I think, but you tell me, in the bond projects, these are baked into those to the bond budget for the middle school for Lee Summit High School for the renovations. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think we are going to move on to item 1.07. I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Hall to speak to you about commercial insurance and music.
Yes, thank you, Emily. Every 6 years by policy EIA, we have to rebid our insurance coverage. We're coming up on our 6th year. So we started a bid about February. Unfortunately, based on our last year and a half, it is a very, very, very hard market when it comes to insurance. So we kind of figured we probably wouldn't get too much response. Put it out to bid the first time, came back, nobody responded except for music. So purchasing felt, hey, let's put it out again just to make sure. We did get another response, but unfortunately that response was from a broker, which is not what we're looking for. We're looking for coverage and not for brokerage. So Arthur J. Gallagher / music came back. Arthur J. Gallagher is a third-party administrator for music, so they handle all the paperwork, all the premiums, all the claims, etc. They came back with a response, and so we decided to recommend that we continue to go with music moving forward. So I'll open it up for any questions that you may have.
Mr. Hall, one of the questions that Dr. Judy Hedrick sent ahead of time was, what's the projected costs and increased amount on this item?
So yes, they did submit cost numbers with their bid, and I believe it was around a 2.9, which is very similar to last year. Unfortunately, it doesn't include the membership credit that we may have included in this based on reserves. So that will come out about October when the music board determines the membership credit. And so that will come to the board. We usually bring that invoice to the board in December. So we kind of felt that would be the time to really tell the board what we're looking at cost wise. But it looked like from their initial bid, it's going to be pretty similar to last year. And because I can tell you our claims based on the fact that we were, didn't have students or staff or even buses on the road for a good portion of 2012 or 2020, our claims management came back very, very, very good. So I'm assured that our reserves within music are going to be pretty high, which means we could even have an increase in a membership credit.
Any additional questions for Ryan? Okay, not hearing any. We will, thank you, Ryan. We're going to move on to item 1.08. And really, this is a letter of intent to purchase land. We're excited that the district has been in discussion and is seeking approval from the Board of Education to purchase Paradise Park for the cost of $6 million. As a part of this process, the district has done an appraisal through Keller, Craig and Associates. We've had Hollis and Miller go out and conduct a structural assessment along with Kyle Gorell. Ryan Hall, as well as music, have gone out and evaluated the property for any potential risk. And then we also have a phase 1 environmental study that's been ordered and will take place in the next week or so. So with that, we're bringing forward to the board the intent to purchase Paradise Park for the purpose of serving early education students. We know this property is a wonderful canvas for that program, as it's already designed, has several design components specifically tailored for early learners. So we feel like that this land will have also the potential for multiple uses that we're continuing to explore. And I'm happy to open this up for any questions you may have.
Dr. Miller, I
Yeah.
did have one question. When we talk about land acquisition like this, where in the overall budget would this fall?
So this would come out of bond proceeds.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome. All right, not hearing any other questions, we're going to move to section 2, which is facilities. And Kyle Grell will speak to you about items 2.01 through 2.04. Kyle?
Thank you very much. We'll start in on the first item, the project easement conveyance to Evergy for the athletics project. Our design team determined that the most effective way of powering the visitor restroom concession building at Lease Summit West was to establish new electrical service off of the main loop drive on the west campus. And so this is simply an easement for Evergy to run their primary line to the building. And it's standard form the district has entered into many times. And in order to maintain the construction schedule, we had gone ahead, Dr. Muller signed this form, and we're bringing it to the board today for ratification. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. All right. I will move on to the next item. This is change order number 3 for the athletics project to Monarch Construction. This change order does contain 15 items. We have remaining in the project a $390,000 construction contingency. And so this change order can be covered within the current project contingency. There are a few items on this change order that deal with errors and omissions by the design team. And so we will be visiting with them to talk about any premium costs that may be applied on their end. The largest item related to that is that a fire alarm system was not included, which would monitor the elevators. And while it's kind of understandable that the buildings don't technically need a fire alarm system, but the fire alarm is what provides the communication to the emergency phones in the elevators. So we did have to add fire alarm for each of the 3 press boxes. And so that was an add to the project. There were a number of unforeseen conditions also included in this change order. As you can imagine, when you tear the top of the structure off of buildings, and especially working on 3 separate sites, there are a number of things that we've run into, structural, soils, mechanical, different things that you can see in the detail on the change order. So I do also want to mention that there are a couple items for AV and security, but those will be discharged to this project. They are just standard infrastructure type items that you would see in any project. And so our other projects to the wiring and cabling that is in walls. And so because we have contingency here, we're going to charge that to this project. So that's the end of my comments. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any. All right, thank you. If it's okay, Dr. Muller, I'll just keep moving on.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. The next item is the 3 middle school renovation guaranteed maximum price amendment. And again, we have a contract with McCown Gordon to construct the renovations for the 3 middle schools in the district that were meant to provide a primary purpose of facilitating the 6th grade move to the middle schools. We also have some ancillary items on the projects that are going to be very valuable to the overall function of the buildings. We are providing secure entries at all 3 buildings that will meet our current standards. There will be some future ready learning opportunities, some collaborative spaces at all buildings to allow some more similar learning environment to what the new middle school has. We're doing some pretty significant renovations to the cafeterias at both Campbell and Pleasantly Middle. And there's also some other interior renovations at Pleasantly Middle School, just some cosmetic upgrades, upgrading the science rooms and some other finishes throughout the building that really have not been touched significantly in the life of that building. So this project had a $21 million construction budget, and had previously shared with the board that we've had some concerns about the current bidding market. So not only the labor issues that are out there, but also just material price increases that are a result of the pandemic, natural disaster, and other factors in the world that have been going on. And so we're at an unprecedented level of inflation in the first 2 quarters of this year. And so we knew going into this that we were going to have kind of a challenge in our hands of meeting the budget. And so after bidding this project, our numbers came in at $23.6 million. So, that is approximately $2.6 million over the budget. And where we would like to suggest accommodating that funding overage is partially within the current project. We do have some contingency outside of the construction line within the project. And then also there is about $1.2 million in furniture, equipment, and technology that we feel like we can take some money from there, get about $1 million out of the current project budget and move that into construction. Then the rest of the money, approximately $1.6 million, we're proposing that be funded through the remaining balance in the middle school project. We did have the option, of course, of going back and rebidding. McCown Gordon and our design team really did not see any advantage in doing that at this time. We don't anticipate that within the next few months the bidding market will change. And so we are recommending award of this contract at this time. Due to the bid market, there were 6 bid packages that we are going to be rebidding. And the largest one was plumbing. We only received 1 plumbing bid, and with the size of that contract, we want to rebid it again. So we are holding allowances in this contract to cover those expenses. And if they were to come in under, then that money would be credited to the project contingency. If they were slightly over, again, it would just get charged to the project contingency. And again, just as a recap, the bid packages on this job, we had probably 8 or 10 different bid packages that were all 20% over the estimate in concrete, carpentry, many of the other bid packages that are directly tied to a lot of the material issues that are happening in the world right now. So with that being said, I'll open up to any questions. And
Kyle, I did send a question, but your explanation answered it for me, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome. Thanks, Judy.
So there's no need to respond to my question.
So Kyle, I have a question. So looking at, you said 1 million will come from within that budget, tech, hardware, some of the furniture, that kind of thing. And then the 1.6 will shift from is it from the contingency on middle school 4?
The bulk of the money that is remaining, at least from a budget line standpoint on the middle school, is in the construction line of the project.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. And again, I'll just thank you for going to the extra effort around helping us with the bond budget spreadsheet that you share, because that makes this conversation and understanding where those dollars are going to come from really easy. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. I was glad to do it. I would just like to, I should have mentioned this earlier, McCown Gordon, in my opinion, really did a nice job of doing everything they could to help the situation that we're in. And an example of that is that the easy thing to do would be to bid this project as just one big package. It makes it easier for them. They get to just kind of work it as one project. But what they did is they structured each individual school as a separate contract. And we just have one contract with McCown Gordon, but now they have to manage all three separately. And so we told all of the contractors going into the bid that we weren't going to just award to one contractor for all three buildings, that we were going to, whoever was low on each individual building, that's who was going to get that contract. So it's a lot more work for them. They are in many bid packages having to work with different contractors, a different structural guy on one building from the other, which takes more management time. But overall, that did save a significant dollar amount on the project for us. So appreciate their efforts on that.
That's great. Thank you for adding that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Kyle, do you want to just do the bond update report?
Yes, we have not had significant changes from last month. We are still sitting at the same bottom line. We have about 172 million in total encumbrance and expenses. And so the last two large expenses we have in the bond are, of course, this middle school renovation GMP. We'll also have the early education project that we talked about earlier. And then a lot of that remaining money that is still there, because see, with just 172 million, there's a lot of money remaining. A lot of that is just the move-in expense for these buildings and the projects with furniture and equipment and technology. There is millions of dollars in expenses that happens just to get the buildings outfitted at the end. But overall, we feel real good about the budget picture and excited to move on to this next phase.
All right. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate the updates. With that, we're going to move to the finance section of our agenda. I'm going to turn it over to Steve Williams to go through the remaining items.
Morning, everyone. And as usual, we start off with the transfers from the general fund to the teachers fund. And this month we need a total of $4,072,109.11 to make this work and get that teachers fund back to the zero balance, since all the money comes out of that for the teacher salaries. And there's really not much revenues that go into that fund. So that's why we do the general fund transfer. Any questions on that? All right. And then if we could go to there you go, the revenue expense report. Thank you, Hannah. All right, as usual, we kind of start up the top left-hand corner, and they're very small numbers. We'll just kind of highlight the basics for the month. We go to the fiscal year 21 actual revenue in the top left-hand there. You'll see we have about $121.8 million total accumulated to date for the operating general fund. We have another 83.6 million in the teachers fund, and that totals 205.4 million as of right now at the end of May for the year to date. That is an increase of $10.1 million from last month, and that's a good thing. It's about normal. And the other, you can see the other funds across the board there, the 3.1 in the debt service fund year to date. Bond construction, that is again from our bond sale back from September, 201.5 plus interest is accumulated in that also. And the capital projects fund has $8.1 million to date for revenues, for a total of the non-restricted funds of about $446.3 million to date. And that is above the original projections, and that is a good thing. And most of that is going to be from the needing an amendment, basically, back from the debt service fund. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit in the agenda. But those, we did some refunding on that, and we'll talk about that more a little bit here. So anyway, that's the non-restricted funds. Then we go over to the restricted funds for revenues. We have nutrition doing much better this month since kids are back in session in the month of May, and they were taking the a la cartes and doing that good stuff to help out the revenues. That is up $313,000 from last month for a total of $5.6 million year to date. That is coming closer to what last year's percentage-wise was at this time. But also, you can remember last year, we were also in a closed status at this point in time. So about coming closer, but within 5%, basically. Activity funds, same kind of thing. It's up $313,000 from last month, currently at $2.1 million. And that is significantly less than last year at this time for the percentage of year to date compared to the total budget. Before and after schools, same thing. It is up $177,000 from last month. So it did a little bit better. It's currently at $1.6 million. And again, that's 49% compared to 76% from last year. So quite a bit down still in revenues compared to last year at this time. And again, all three of those funds were drastically affected by the COVID issues we've talked about every time, each time this month. Then if we drop down to the I guess need to talk about, I'm sorry, go back over to the fiscal year 20 estimated actual to date compared to this year's. In the current combined actual, the general fund and teacher fund is currently about 99.52% compared to last year at 91.3%. That's up 8.5% from last year. And that is comparison of the budget itself. So a conservative revenue budget gives a higher percentage there. That is actually up $12.6 million from May. And that's about normal for our revenues in those two funds. Also remember, please, that this does include the $3.5 million from the CARES and ESSER monies that we received as part of this budget this year also. And that does help with our cash balances and so forth that we're going to see just a minute at the bottom of this rascal. Okay, now let's move to the middle of the form there, if we could, please. The fiscal year 21 actual expenditures year to date. The general fund has an expenditure of $68.8 million currently. Add that to the $113.2 million in the teacher funds, gives us $182 million year to date. That is up $17 million from last month, and that is also pretty normal for an average month. Percentage-wise, we're pretty close to last year at this time, 84.5 versus 84.9% of the budget. And we'll talk about a little bit more too. The debt service fund is over its budgeted amount, and that's again due to those bond sales refundings, and we're going to talk about that in the amendment side of it. As we move over to the nutrition, BAS, and activity funds, currently expenditures year to date, $5.8 million for nutrition, $2.0 million for activity, and $2.5 million for BAS. Percentage-wise, again, those are less than last year's, again, due to the COVID situation, reduced expenditures, but we also had a lot more reduced revenues. When we add those rascals together, at the very bottom right-hand corner turns into the nutrition, BAS, and activities cash balances to date. That's what those are in the bottom right-hand corner. Currently, the nutrition is not $294,000 in the negative. Activity is $1.8 million in the positive, and BAS is $1.3 million negative cash at this time. You can see the percentiles compared to last year. And bottom line, if you go to that gray portion of that, when we actually compare the total cash for the year compared to last year at this time, nutrition is down $756,000. Activity is down $117.5. And before and after school is down $1.2 million due to this, again, lack of revenues, still having main expenditures still coming in. So those three all added together currently have an restricted fund balance of negative about $2.1 million year to date. When we look at last month's to date, we're up in the nutrition about $683,000. So that's improved in cash balances for last month. We're up $70,000 in activity funds and up $232,000 in the BAS. So we did make some improvement in May due to the kids coming back and the activity starting to ramp up again. But again, not enough to make up for the whole year's losses. So add it all together, total year to date, we're $2.1 million less than what we were last year at this time for all three of those added together. Any questions on the restricted side of it right now? Okay. If we go over to the left-hand side of the bottom there, that gets into the cash balances of just the general fund and the teachers fund year to date. We now are showing $81.9 million in our cash balances, and that is 38.04% of the operating budget. That is up $8.6 million from last year at this time. So those revenues are coming in better and our expenses are better. So overall cash balances is improved. And a large part of that, again, is due to the CARES and COVID money coming in to help us out this year also. Any questions on that? Okay, that's our expenditures and revenues to date. Then, Hannah, if you can move over to the balance sheet, please. Thank you. All right, this just shows in detail the cash balances in each individual fund versus the first page we just talked about, just kind of showed the general and restricted funds. At the top, it starts off with the assets in each individual fund and the investments. It shows that on the left-hand side there. We have 140.4 million in the MOSIP funds and Payne Weber accounts. We also have a pre-interest amount of $1,600, and that was from Payne Weber Investment. They gave us an advanced interest. We've got to account for that, and it'll get used here pretty quickly. So then it shows the total assets for each fund coming across on the top part there. Drop down to the middle is the P card payables to date, $38,500 basically for the P cards that are in transition. And at the bottom is the fund balances to date. And for each fund, it shows the beginning cash balances for each fund, plus the revenues added to date for each fund, less the expenditures, any transfers or recodes for each fund accordingly, and the liability and fund balance amount for each fund. You can see we have $81.9 million total in the general and teacher funds. And when we subtract off the $38,500, that gives us the $81.9 million for the cash balance that we used on the previous form in the left-hand corner to compare the previous years. And you go across this whole rascal there at the very bottom. We currently have total cash in the bank for all funds combined, about $298.2 million as of right now at the end of May. Any questions on that one? All righty. If we can move to the investment funds, Hannah, thank you. Perfect. All right, great. The top part there had the details of all the Payne Weber investments. The summary of all those is $30.1 million as of this time for May 31st. The total MOSIP accounts is $86.3 million in the 6% rates. Then we also were able to get some investments in the longer term for $10 million, another $10 million maturing 6.3 and 7.2, and able to get one for $4 million that matures on 11.5 with a little better interest rates. As those come up, we try to take advantage of those as best we can. Add them all together, we have about $140.4 million in invested funds at this time. Compared to last year at this time in May, that's up $10.7 million. And again, that correlates with the revenues we just talked about on the other side, having additional cash. When we add in the 2021 restricted bond funds investments for the construction fund. We have 151 point almost $5 million in that. We were able to get $7 million invested at a little higher interest rate for 0.09% that matures on 10/15 of 21. So that helps our cash flow with that too. And a total of $158.5 million for the bond funds at this time. When we add the bond funds and the MOSIP and the Payne Weber accounts all together, we now have about $198.8 million in the bank that is invested. Any questions on the investment report? Okay, perfect. Then we get more into the new things. And item 3.03 is the amendment for the budget. And as we kind of briefly touched on earlier, with the bond sale last year, it also included a bond refunding. And that was to take advantage of lower interest rates and help the district out for its payments going forward. That's a good thing. And in doing so, what they did was that it also adjusted our bond payment schedule. They ran some escrow accounts and some bond refunding principal through our debt payment schedule, and that revised the amount we needed to pay this year. So what it actually did was it increased it from an estimated $17.7 million in the original bond and interest payment schedule and increased that to $27.746 million in the restructuring of this bond payment schedule. In the long run, it's still a good thing. It's just we had to show this up front to make this all work. And that's how the bondsman organized it. And in doing so, it revised our payments from original published budget in June of last year from the preliminary. And now we need to have the accountability for the $27.7 million in the new budget to make this work. All the other funds were budgeted more than what we're going to estimate to spend for the year. So they do not need to be amended. So we're in good shape there. And we do not need to revise or amend the revenue budgets according to statutes. And that's really all I had to say about the amendment budgets. Is there any questions on that I could help with? Okay, perfect. So that'll be asked for tomorrow's board meeting for approval of that amendment. Then we also have for the board meeting tomorrow night, the bond, I'm sorry, not the bond, the preliminary budget for next year. So we do this every year. It is based on an assessed valuation of 5.38% increase. So that is a good thing based on the information we have so far from the counties. Total levy is estimated to be about 5.3033, and that is an increase of a decrease, I'm sorry, that's a good thing, a decrease of 0.1672. So right now, that's based on a non-binding tax rate that was submitted from Jackson County. So hopefully the tax rates will go down. If this all comes true, that's a good thing. With the assessed valuation going up, levies go down, hopefully. State funding is estimated using the state adequacy target of $6,375 per ADA student. And we anticipate about 410 student increase for 2021. It actually went down this last year. So hopefully get those kids back based on the kids coming back in regular classroom structures. And the revenues are also based on the historical information that we have in the past. So the regular trends are going forward for that. It also includes this next year an estimated $12.4 million for federal ESER 2 and ESER 3, which is also called the American Rescue Plan. And that's based on that information coming into this budget this year. Overall, that is $12.4 million that is estimated for that. If you take that out, the net revenues are basically held flat in this projection at this time. So if you take those out, it's about $410,000, and that's a 0.19% increase in revenues if you take the revenues for the ESER 2 and 3 out. Operating monies and so forth based on this plan. We included salary step in this plan, and that's about $4.1 million for a regular one-step movement for all our staff. Additional staff from the Board of Education that was approved. That's a net amount after the readjustments were made for that. Including this is about $708,000. Health insurance was projected at about $250,000 increase. And based on the information we're getting now, we may not need that in this budget. So we're kind of holding on that till it's final, but I think we're going to talk about that more coming up in July. So that's held in there now, may not need it. It's also based on a phase 1 salary and benefits increase to get steps to make movement towards the step catch up, so to speak. And that's about $2.7 million. It's also included in this budget. Additional expenditures to address the COVID-related student academics gap is also part of this plan. That comes from the ESSER money also. And that's a requirement of a 20% amount to go towards that. We're going to do more than that, so that's a good thing to help our kids. That estimate is based on about $1,170,000 based on that in this budget going forward. Then it'll have a 2-year plan going forward after that, about $1.1 million in those expenditures also. Again, each of the 3-year plan to help the kids in their gap needs that they're needing to get educated back to the levels going forward. It also includes a budget reduction from the 2021 budget of one-time Chromebook purchases that was $4.1 million. So that was in the budget. Now it's taken out because that was a one-time purchase. So that is factored into this calculation going forward also. Debt service payments and interest are also included. Capital project funds are also included. And the bond fund includes previously identified estimated expenditures for the 2020 bond project issues. And that's all part of this budget. Preliminary budgets so projected for June 30th, 2022, operating cash balances of about $75 million. And that's a 31.54% annual, using the annual Secretary Board report, which is the SBR. So those are the percentiles we try to do at the end of the year to maintain this cash balance. The board has directed that those would be 20% or more. And this budget projects a 31.54% balance at that time. Again, a large part of that is due to the CARES money and ESSER monies being part of this. I guess that's about all I was going to kind of share. Are there any questions more on the preliminary budget at this time? It'll all come across. There's a 1-page summary in the board report that has each individual fund listed on it. It has the revenues listed, each one, and the current expenditures total to date. You'll actually be approving that based on the total dollar amounts for these individual funds. $77.6 million in the incidental general fund, $140 million in the teacher fund. Capital projects is estimated at $13.5 million. Principal debt and interest is estimated at $18.7 million, and the NBA non-nutrition bass and activity accounts about $14.3 million, and the bond construction was estimated at $129 million, which will be part of Kyle's plan going forward for that. And add all those together, the total budget is for the preliminary at this time is 21-22 for $393,117,012. And that basically is what the amount would be for the year at this time. And those will be all adjusted based on information we receive going forward. Amendments will be done during the year, and going forward, that should be what we need at this time. Okay, are there any questions I might be able to help with on that little quick summary? Well, good.
I appreciate you going through that and the detail that's included here. I wanted to ask for the meeting tomorrow evening, both for the budget amendment and for the preliminary budget review. Dr. Miller and Dr. Buck and Steve, are you guys planning to come to the podium and kind of do a review and presentation as a part of the meeting?
Do we normally go through the budget slideshow that we did during the workshop, is that normal or do we just talk about it?
I believe in the past, it's been a brief presentation.
Okay,
So it's a brief recap of what you did in the work session.
Great.
okay.
That's what I
How
was,
much,
thank you.
how much detail are you wanting?
Probably comparable to what you did this morning.
Okay, even been a little bit better. All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Hedrick, Board Member Campbell, that concludes our agenda items for today. Is there anything else that we can answer any questions for you at this time?
No, I don't. I was just going to respond a little bit. In the past, we have gone through that PowerPoint presentation, just kind of briefly, which really addresses both the amendment piece of the budget, and then we kind of stopped and had the board take action on that, and then we went and completed that PowerPoint presentation with the preliminary budget, if that helps you, Steve,
Okay,
in terms of what our process has been. I mean, not that you have to follow that, but I just wanted to give you that information.
that way the public could see the whole
Right.
potential slideshow. Okay, but not really probably go through each line, individual line to kind of summarize it like we did kind of in the
Right.
workshop. Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds fair?
And
I
thank you all.
appreciate-
Thanks everyone for being here today.
All right, thanks. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.